Hello and welcome to Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today I'm very excited to have Reiki Master Torsten Lange with us. Torsten is founder and director of the Reiki Academy in London, and he's the only Hay House author for Reiki. He has taught thousands of students worldwide, and his extensive research led to the world's first scientific proof of how Reiki works. Torsten, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So let's first of all define for our listener what is Reiki and why should they care?
That's a good question. How much time have you got? Okay.
Well, we have an hour, so.
I tried. Reiki is commonly referred to as a Japanese energy healing modality. That is as kind of technical as it goes, but there's much more to it. First of all, everything is energy. So what makes Reiki special? This is a very big question. And what makes Reiki special is that you can feel it. Everybody who uses Reiki, who learns Reiki, and everybody who gets a Reiki treatment can feel physically there's something going on. So it's normally given using your hands. So you place your hands on the recipient or even on yourself, or you keep the hands slightly away, and people can feel something. It gets a bit warm. Sometimes it feels almost like an energy flow going through the body. So that is definitely something going on. And it has results. It's used in about 800 hospitals in the United States at the moment. So it is officially recognized as a complementary therapy. And complementary in this case means it does complement traditional Western healthcare. So it's not competition. It really is very beneficial to use it together. And of course, it wouldn't be used in hospitals had it not any results. So it does bring results. It tends to reduce the pain. It tends to allow people to heal more quickly. It's absolutely extraordinary that after the use of Reiki, often the healing time after surgery accelerates by 2 or 3 times. So it's very, very, very quick. But there's also another element to that, and that's what I find so fascinating. When people receive Reiki, they sense not just something physical going on. They often see colors, and the sensation of colors with your closed eyes basically is a way of our minds to translate an energetic experience into a visual. So something is going on, something is lifting. It is really higher vibrational energy, and often people get a lot of intuitive insight. It's very interesting. So somebody may have a physical problem, and the treatment brings some awareness that the physical problem actually started with a psychological problem, a trauma they had in their lives. So it's merely a symptom of some kind of deeper roots of a physical problem. So it addresses all sorts of things. Did I stray a little bit from the topic?
No, that was perfect.
That's kind of in brief what Reiki does. It is a truly holistic therapy, so it works on all things. If you cut your finger when you cook, it will help it heal. If you feel bruised in a toxic relationship, it will work on that. It's absolutely mind-blowing, the reach of what it can do.
Wow.
But I'm sure we'll get deeper into that in a moment.
We will, and I would love to know what you mean by deeper roots of an illness or chronic pain or something. Is that like at the spiritual level that you're referring to, or tell me more about that, the deeper roots of a physical issue?
There are different levels. First of all, there is a very simple physical level. So if somebody's got a knee problem, it may well be that the knee is not the problem, that they have a problem with the hips or a problem with the ankle. And in Reiki treatment, the practitioner tends to be intuitively directed where to place the hands. So they will find themselves moving to the lower back or to the hips or so, rather than staying at the knee, because that's where they're directed to. So this is still a physical cause, but it shows that it's somewhere else in the body. Of course, the knee is all about movement. And I wouldn't be surprised if somebody has a knee problem who somehow feels stuck in their lives, whether it's on the career path or whether it's in a relationship, and they really want to move on. They want to move away, and they feel stuck in where they are. So it may well be that there's something completely different as the underlying reason, and rather than just working on the physical level, Reiki may bring up some thoughts about that. And afterwards, in the discussion with the client, they will say, it's so odd. I thought I was getting a treatment for my knee problem, and instead, all I was thinking was my family, and how family issues kind of keep me from doing what I really want to do in life. And quite extraordinarily, I really find that Reiki is doing something to help with that. And that's something that I entirely didn't understand when I started with Reiki. I used to have a business in London. I used to have a store, and I used to design jewelry, and I was terribly proud of myself having a store on famous Regent Street in London. And all that collapsed, and I went bankrupt up to a point when I lost my apartment in Notting Hill and my apartment in Germany, and even my family's house, because they guaranteed for the loans. And for a few months I was homeless. I stayed with friends, but it was getting to a point where I really didn't want to carry on with my life anymore. And I tend to find that experiences like that often bring change. For me, there was no change for 2 years, and at some stage I just really didn't quite know what to do anymore. And my mum was given a book, and the book mentioned Reiki, and she read it and thought, this is pretty cool. You can have healing hands. Everybody can learn that. And somehow, I'm not so sure how she managed to get the money together, but she went on a course. And around the time I was offered a job, and I thought, I can do it. Not terribly practical, but I can give it a try and do up some property. So I was refurbishing an apartment. And about a year or so later, I looked back and I realized that this was the turning point of my life getting back on track. There was more money coming in, more jobs coming in, and slowly I could live a normal life again. And I suddenly realized, it's really interesting that it took so long, because I didn't really bring the two together, that this job started on Friday. And it was the very same Friday my dear mum started with her Reiki course. And I thought, well, this is such a weird coincidence. But of course, there are no coincidences in the universe. We're talking about energy. Energy, or energy theory, ultimately means everything's connected. So if one element in our life changes, everything can change. And once I understood that the element that actually had changed was the arrival of Reiki, of higher vibrational energy, I was just absolutely mesmerized. And I got my first Reiki course as a present from my mum for Christmas, because I didn't want to do it. I really just wanted to get back on track and thought, okay, sounds interesting, but what am I supposed to do with healing hands when I do our properties? Actually, it's very practical, because I now give Reiki to my power drill, and it works much better. So it works on all sorts of levels, but I just started to learn it, and I realized there are lots of things changing in my life, not just physically, but also in terms of awareness. I got more intuitive, and things just kind of fell into place. And this kind of led me where I am now as a Reiki teacher. And the beauty of teaching so many people is that I get daily feedback that I'm not the only one where it works. That would be a bit odd, but it really can work for everybody, and you don't even need to be open to it. That's, again, another aspect of Reiki. You can just get a Reiki treatment, say, I'm so sorry, I don't believe in that. But if you really want to waste your time, okay, go on, give me a Reiki treatment, and I can guarantee people will believe in Reiki afterwards.
That's amazing, yes. It can be hard to win over a skeptic if you're talking about something that's kind of in the woo-woo space, right? And
Yeah.
I was in that skeptic world up until age 42, until I got touched on the head by a monk in India, and he zapped me, and I saw everything in Technicolor and everything. And so that was my awakening almost 9 years ago. And until that point, though, I was skeptical about everything. Now it's all about the willing suspension of disbelief and just being open-hearted, open-minded, and yeah, just amazing, miraculous stuff tends to happen then.
Once we realize there is more that can be grasped with our five senses, a whole new world opens up. I think the word surreal is the most often used word to describe Reiki, because the words are not really there anymore to describe these experiences that I don't really want to call out of body experience, but they are something else. They go beyond what we are used to in our everyday life, and that's so extraordinary. And we suddenly sense there's something else. We see light. We just somehow feel there is a spiritual dimension, in a way, a higher dimension, and that's what I find so fascinating about Reiki. And as you said about skeptics, it's very difficult to convince skeptics, and I normally don't even try by explaining. I just say, well, have you got 5 minutes? I give you some Reiki, and then you can see it for yourself. But I tend to find that when we have healing hands, when we feel that there is a connection, we change. I was talking about Reiki as a complementary therapy, using your hands and looking at the results. But in a way, you can kind of trace it back. When you feel something, you can go up your arms into your body and somehow sense what you are actually connected to, where this particular high vibration energy is coming from. And when you do that, you really feel a connection to something higher in the universe. So I thought the more people have this tangible physical proof of a connection to another realm, it changes so much. It changes the perception of our lives. It changes how we interact with other people. And I thought it would be just great if more people had that. But how do you convert skeptics? And for several years, I was asking my students to fill 2 glasses with tap water, as long as they live in an area where it's safe to drink it, and give Reiki to some. So just have a glass of water, place your hands around, give it some Reiki, and not to the other, and taste the difference. And the vast majority can really taste the difference. And some even do it as a game at home, as a party game, and have a whole jug with water, 2 jugs with water, and let the whole family or group of friends taste it. And it really brings change. And I eventually found a laboratory in Switzerland that was able to measure these changes. And they certify water as being from an original natural source, mountain, spring water, or being tampered with and polluted and then artificially cleansed afterwards. So they developed a method that eventually looks at the residue of the minerals of the water under a microscope. And an hour of Reiki increased the quality from kind of decent level Swiss tap water to entry level spring water. And it was just amazing. And I've got the pictures and they are on my website. And for me, that was a major, major breakthrough, because I thought, well, this really at least inspires people to give it a try. And once people give it a try, hopefully they stay with it, whether they only use Reiki or many of these beautiful other modalities like yoga or meditation or so. It doesn't really matter, as long as it helps to understand that there is more to life.
Yeah. Now, one habit I've gotten into this year, since I had a second spiritual awakening in January, is to bless my food and drink and supplements, vitamins, etc., before I consume it. Or oftentimes I'll forget, and it's while I'm consuming it. So I do firmly believe that this is transmuting whatever I'm consuming. And
absolutely.
Yeah. And so where does Reiki fit into that? Do you Reiki your food and drink beforehand, or you just pray over it, or just have an intention? You do a mix of all the above? Like, how does that work for you?
I suppose it's a mix. I'm a normal person and live a normal life. And when I get a muesli bar or a salad or whatever, I go out, I don't tend to sit in the restaurant saying, thank you for the universe, for all these beautiful things, or give it Reiki for a few minutes or so. I just I tend to say thank you once I realize that I really should. So I do that. Sometimes I really give Reiki to particular foods as well when I want them to be particular healing, when I don't feel very well, or when I feel the quality should be improved. And it can really that. I once burned a dish, a curry I made in London. And it was so terrible. I was just about to throw it away. And then I just sat there and gave myself Reiki because I was really annoyed. It was for guests and they were due to arrive soon. And the whole lunch was ruined, I thought. And then I tried again and suddenly it didn't taste as bad anymore. And then I thought, could it be that the Reiki I just gave myself had that effect? So then, of course, I kind of bombarded the wok with a curry with Reiki. And 20 minutes later, there was not the slightest hint of being burned. And I told everybody over lunch, of course. So they were extremely careful trying to taste whether there was anything wrong, and there wasn't anymore. Yeah. So these are some beautiful experiences. But yes, I think it's really important to say thank you and to realize it is a gift. It is a gift from the planet, from nature, from the universe, that we have something beautiful to eat and to drink. And this is something precious. And the more we develop that, I find the more we develop a connection with nature and we feel more part of a bigger picture. I mean, we water the plants and then we eat the plants, and it's all kind of, it's a cycle. And to realize we are part of a cycle, of the cycle of life, is fascinating. What basically Reiki brought me to is to understand that the cycle of life is one part of a bigger cycle. And for me, the connection I feel in Reiki really gives me this proof and connection to awareness. I'm connected to something beyond the physicality. In other words, I've been around before I was born. I will go on after I die. And this fascinated me so much over the years, and I have a lot of students who are psychic and mediums, and they give messages, and so it's fascinating. Often these abilities open up much more with Reiki. That I did some training with Brian Weiss as a past life regression therapist, so I do that as well, and I think it just really blends in amazingly, and it helps us to understand the difficulties of life. And as you already said, often we need a breakthrough, something that changes our perception. And most of the time, this is not a pleasant experience that this brings. It's an accident. It's a family problem. It's something where we just hit a wall. And often we hit a wall again and again and again until we finally realize, I need to change. And I tend to find that Reiki brings then change and help, and it's just extraordinary what it can do. You'll probably hear a lawnmower outside. I hope it's not too bad.
It's not bad.
I didn't know what was going on here.
So you mentioned Brian Weiss and past life regression therapy. So I had Monica Berg on recently, and she is involved with the Kabbalah Center. And we talked a lot about Kabbalah, but we also talked about past lives and reincarnation. That's actually a core principle in Kabbalah, and thus, because of its being the mystical core of Judaism, it's thus in Judaism too. So Many Lives, Many Masters was one of her favorite books. We talked a bit about it in the episode, and I've been reading it. I love the book, and I'm curious, how does, let's say, a disease, a cancer, for example, that might be in the gut or in that kind of region of the body, maybe relate to a past life injury, perhaps mortal injury like a bullet wound to that same area? I've heard these things can happen and be connected, and you basically carry it over from lifetime to lifetime. Neck pain where you'd gotten guillotined to death in a past life, and now you've got all these neck issues. Can you talk a bit about that?
It's very difficult to pinpoint. Occasionally in a past life regression, people get an image, an idea of what happened in a past incarnation that is somehow connected to a problem they suffer with in this life. And then it's helpful and healing. I basically wouldn't necessarily go as far to say everything we have and we do and we suffer from this life is kind of connected to a past life. It almost deflects a little bit from being in the here and now and having to deal with this now. And I tend to find the fact that we have it now means now is the time to change. Now is the time to open up. And yes, it may be connected to a past life, absolutely. But for me, that's not the key behind. If a past life regression helps, it's amazing. Reiki can help. Often conventional therapies, surgery is needed as well. But what I do find is that this kind of proof we get from past life experience or past life regressions, which is amazing. I was doing a regression at a seminar a while ago, and the lady who actually organized it all, she found herself, and she allowed me to use the story. She found herself as a witch in the UK in the 17th century, because I always ask people to see if they can get a date. And she got a date, and I need to check it out. Was it 1643 or something like that? It was a very, very particular date. And straight away afterwards, she went to her phone and Googled witchcraft in the UK, 16 something, whenever it was. And it was the one year where there was an act of parliament outlawing witchcraft. And she had to flee. And she saw herself fleeing to Scotland, where she eventually burned. But it's burned on a stake. But that was just fascinating. And this kind of proof, to actually get a date and get proof there is something, is fascinating. What does it mean for this life? Well, she is extremely open to spirituality. She promotes openness and tolerance in spirituality. So maybe this is an effect of that past life. But for me, it's more important to see this idea there are past lives, and it's not about particular past lives, but it's about the concept. So life does not end with death. In other words, everything I do here is an experience with a beginning and an end. So whole life is an experience. So if I look at life from that perspective as an experience, I tend to find it's easier to live and easier to accept life. We may get a little bit more wild and think, okay, I really, really want to have some experiences. We think, okay, if I'm really stuck in a job I don't want, what's the point for the rest of my life? This is something I want to experience. I have experienced 25 years of boredom. Now I want to do something really exciting. Now I want to see what my real talents are, what I'm born with. And I'm doing a coaching, a 21-day coaching at the moment for people to raise their vibrations and realize what they're basically here to do. And one exercise is to really write down your talents and realize what you have brought with you. And of course, that's a really interesting question. So what are my talents? Am I a good communicator? Am I a fantastic artist? Am I good with children or whatever, all sorts of things, and really then do something about it and with it. But it also means we all have shortcomings. So the question is, why did we bring these shortcomings? What was that meant to teach us? So we are in this interesting package that is called incarnation in a body, and we brought particular things with us to create the experience we were meant to have. But there is also something beyond that. And this for me is so extremely important to understand life. And for me, my healing hands are the daily recon. So this healing hands, what I feel that this connection really is a daily reminder that there is something else, something beyond this life. And to live in this awareness is just the greatest gift I think one can possibly have.
It is indeed. And for people who are just kind of waking up to this possibility, it's intoxicating. They see that, wow, there's so much to this reality that is beyond my previous concepts and understanding, and then you can end up getting kind of lost in it and lose your grounding, and you still need to pay the bills, and you still need to show up for work and answer the phone and all this sort of stuff. So what do you tell somebody, and I'm just, perhaps maybe talking about myself, since I kind of got a little up in the clouds earlier this year and needed to get back down to earth as well. So what do you tell somebody like that? How do they stay in both worlds, 1 foot in the 3D, 1 foot in the 5D, so that they don't end up getting too lost and not being practical? And how do they also stay deeply connected? Sounds like with your practicing your Reiki every day, that's how you bring the 5D down to the 3D, and you stay connected between those two worlds. I'm curious, what would you tell somebody who's not seeing themselves necessarily as a Reiki master or even as a practitioner, just a regular Joe or Jill?
That's such an important question. I didn't really want to do what I'm doing. I tried anything and everything to get back on my feet and to go back to being in business and my ordinary life, because I didn't want to sit there cross-legged on a nail board with a cup of herbal tea or something like that. This is just not me. I want to live a normal life, and I thought I had to decide between these two things. And it turns out this is not correct. At the moment, I'm in LA, I'm going out, I'm having fun, I'm meeting people, I'm living a normal life. And I do that and start my day every morning with a Reiki self-treatment. So I just place the hands on my body, and for half an hour, I give myself Reiki. So I start every morning with this connection. And during the day, when something goes in a direction I don't quite understand, then I tend to ask myself, why is this? What am I supposed to learn from that? What's the experience? It is... It's been a process bringing these two sides together, but I think it's absolutely okay. I have a lot of accountants on my courses, interestingly. I sometimes wonder whether this is the most spiritual job people can possibly do, because they really open up to that, and they carry on to be an accountant. One lady didn't want to do that. She thought, well, she now kind of opened up to all this spirituality, and she really needed to change her life. And then at some stage, she realized that she actually likes what she's doing, and she's pretty good at it. And she works for a charity. So by being good with figures and with finances there, she can help them to do more, to stretch the money they have further. And ultimately, she realized that this is basically her job. And this is a great thing to bring these two together. So I don't think we need to make these big changes in our everyday life necessarily. Some people may, but for others, it's really the awareness. For me, there are many beautiful concepts and many beautiful paths and modalities, but Reiki is so incredibly simple. Everybody can learn it. You don't have to believe in it, and you always have your hands. So if there's a problem, you can start thinking about, maybe this is a challenge. Maybe I'm supposed to learn something from it. Maybe this, maybe that. And you can get completely lost in your mind. With Reiki, what I do is I just ask, Reiki, please help. And I place my hands on myself. And I feel the connection. I feel the energy. And I wait for my stress levels to reduce, some intuition, something happening, and it tends to. This is my experience. It's just really extraordinary what it can do.
Yeah, that's really cool. And do you feel like there's some angelic assistance or some light beings that are connecting to you and working through you as you're using your healing hands, or is it just you're connecting straight to source and getting the energy from there? Like how do you relate to the angelic realm and the spirit guides, ascended masters, and source, spirit, God, the creator, directly? How does all that work for you?
I've just a few weeks ago published my latest book, which is called Proof of Reiki, Proof of Eternity. And it refers to basically exactly that question. What are we actually doing? What are we connected to? What is going on there? First of all, I am absolutely certain that everybody is a spiritual person, even though they may not know. So we tend to distinguish between some people who are very spiritual, some people we are not. We are all spiritual because we are all spirits. We are all eternal souls temporarily in a body. And this is basically what connects us all. But we are all also connected to these higher vibrational realms. And I'm absolutely certain we all have an army of helpers up there. Sometimes I feel my dad or my grandmother or other people I have known in my life, and I feel the presence, and I just know there's an opening, and they are there. I feel support and I feel love, and this is something a lot of people feel to their great astonishment in Reiki treatments as well, that suddenly there's a presence of loved ones who've moved on. There's, of course, another level of guides and helpers who primarily help us to develop and to make the most of our lives. Spirit helpers, guides, masters, ascended masters, whatever we want to call them. And for me, it was, and it sounds still odd to say that, but quite an extraordinary extraordinary find over the years that the founder of the Reiki system, who died 100 years ago, turned out to be my guide, and that he basically guided me for a long time through the experiences I had, my bankruptcy and all these things, because they kind of mirrored his life experience. He also had a bankruptcy and was a businessman, and then things changed through Reiki. So possibly because of that, I have this very strong connection to Reiki and this momentum to really teach it. Recently, I noticed another guide in my life. And when I asked who it was, I got the image of an angelic being, whatever that means. No wings, but it was another level of connection, and it felt kind of vaster and higher. And it's very interesting that this also is very much in line with what Brian Weiss writes in Many Lives, Many Masters, where he talks to the masters and guides in between during the past life regressions, and some are kind of very close to the bodily experience here on the level of form, and some are kind of very far away and see a much bigger picture. And this is just fascinating when we start opening up to these things and we realize how vast the universe is, how many different levels there are. At some stage we may get to a level where we talk about principles, about laws of the universe and how they go through everything and kind of guide and structure the universe as it is. And we realize that we are kind of bound by these principles, the most important being love. And that, of course, then eventually brings us to the idea, where is this universe coming from? How was it kind of brought into existence? What is the source? And for me, I call it light, or I call it the source. Some people call it God. One of my great influences in my life has been Neil Donald Walsh, who brought out this famous series of the Conversation with God books. I'm not so sure if I would have used the word God, because I think it's normally has all these religious connotations, but ultimately it refers to there is a higher and there is a highest power, and the highest power is the starting and the end point of everything. And this is what I can feel in what I'm doing. This is what my exercises, even against the backdrop of a lawnmower outside, what my exercises can feel. And this is so funny. Sometimes I have a real distraction and I think, oh dear, this is happening. This is just normal life. Why is that happening again? And at the same time, I feel, and there's something beyond. I'm still connected, no matter what's there in life. And for me, this all started with Reiki, and this is why I love it so. There are many beautiful modalities, but it's this tangibility of the experiences that we have that I find so amazing.
Yes, and the smallest little annoyances or distractions or whatever can be a great lesson for us if we're open to hearing the interpretation and to get the lesson from it. And a great example of this is from just yesterday for me. My son, who's 2, just turned 2, was he's adorable, amazing little person, and he was messing around with some stuff on my on the bed table, just I don't know, some papers and things, and one of the papers, I think it was an envelope with something in it, just flew off of the end table and or the bedside table, and then right under a wardrobe that is immovable and has like this tiny little slit of space at the bottom. There's no way I'm ever going to retrieve that. And I was really irritated about that. Not to him, like that was my fault for not being like there. I was 2 feet away from him, but I wasn't fully present with him. And I was just irritated, like, how am I going to get that? I spent like 15 minutes trying to get it, and to no avail. It's like, okay, is there a metal ruler or something I could use? No, I don't have one. Like, what do I have that's close enough to a metal? It was a waste of time. So I decided, like, I've got a connection here. I'll just ask, is this important? And I don't even need to speak it out loud. I just think it in my head. Was that an important piece of paper? The answer is no. It's like, well, why did that happen? Because you weren't paying attention to him. You need to pay more attention to him. Like, oh, right. And that was already given to me as something I need to do earlier in the week in an Akashic Records reading. So sometimes it takes a couple of reminders to get the lesson.
And they're not always pleasant, but important. We need to kind of stay on track, and it's so easy to get sucked back into normal life and the superficiality of life. And I think superficiality is okay. This is why I'm very concerned that I wasn't aware that I was being filmed today and my hair is completely out of place. But then, of course, beyond that superficiality, there's something else. Okay, yes. Does my hair do anything for what I say? Or is it my words? Is it my connection? I was just sitting here before I connected to Reiki. I asked for help and for guidance. And then, okay. If people want to see me with better hair, then they should go to my website. Otherwise,
your hair looks great. Nobody would have even thought something about your hair.
Isn't it funny that we ourselves kind of make these things and think in certain things. So there's always something that can take us off track. And this is very much the experience of life. And I don't see anything negative in that. I just see it not even as a challenge. I see it as a learning opportunity, as a learning course. And the more relaxed and open we become, and the more we just rest in ourselves and think and realize, okay, I am a spiritual being anyway. Nothing can harm me deep inside. Everything else is just an experience. Take a deep breath and just feel this connection. And I tend to find we feel it best around our heart, which is just so incredible. And when we really rest in our heart, then from there, things start falling into place. And we make a different connection to other people. And I just go from there.
Yeah.
Sometimes I struggle a little bit, but I'm trying. I'm working on it. And as you said earlier, I think it's just so important to not having to decide between these different concepts of a normal life and a spiritual life, but to realize that all life is spiritual. It just depends on your inner connection and how we then live. And at some stage, hopefully, that has a an influence on what's going on around us, whether it is about how we vote, whether it is how we treat people in different positions, how we see global resources distributed, and so on. So at some stage, when we really feel this connection and realize we are all connected to each other and to this higher realm, then I feel it does bring quite a bit of responsibility as well. And sometimes it's really difficult to live up to that. But to constantly remind ourselves and try, I find we can really change the world and make the world a better place, being spiritually connected people. Again, everybody is spiritually connected, but spiritually aware people, I probably should say.
Yeah. And I love thinking about it this way, that I don't just simply want to be aware, I want to be aware of my awareness.
Absolutely. Yes, very true. So in a way, you kind of you watch yourself and you realize what's going on in your awareness. So you are both. You are in your body, and you are kind of your higher self and your higher perspective at the same time.
Yes. So
looking at a problem and think, so what is the higher perspective of it? What's the higher take? What can I learn from it?
Right. And a great example is what happened just today with you, because you were supposed to be interviewed by my wife, Orion, to be on Stellar Life podcast. And I'm getting more and more nervous while she's not answering, not showing up. She was gone all day with her mom at some doctor's appointments. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I'll just step in and do the interview. If I have no idea who you are at that point, I didn't even read your bio yet. And I'm like, okay, I'll just step in. Like she had stepped in for me back in April when I was interviewing Karen Noe, an amazing psychic medium who has a course on how to receive messages from angels and departed loved ones. And I was very excited for that interview, but then there was an injured animal, a cat, a stray cat that I was asked to save from above. And I opened my Akashic Records because I just learned how to do that at a workshop a few weeks earlier. So I was able to do that and ask for guidance. Like, what am I supposed to do? Clearly there's something wrong with this cat, and I really like this cat. I keep seeing it every week and feeding her, because I just knew it was a her. It turns out it's a her. And thankfully the guidance was take her to a vet, because she ended up having a broken pelvis, or a pelvic fracture, and a dislocated foot, and she was severely dehydrated. She needed a vet. She would have died. So I saved her. Turns out she was a pet of mine in a past life, maybe multiple past lives, but for sure at least one. And I missed my interview. And my wife, Orion, stepped in and interviewed Karen Noe. And that was such a beautiful, amazing episode for Stellar Life podcast. A few months later, I got another opportunity to interview Karen. But, it's like, that was divinely orchestrated. The whole thing was meant to happen. There was this beautiful, amazing thing that happened to my wife earlier that day, where she was visiting her grandparents' graves for the first time in her life. And she got all kinds of incredible messages, and she got 1111 on her phone and everything. It was really, really beautiful. And she talked a bit about it in the episode. And that was an incredible opportunity for her to share that, and for this amazing conversation and connection to happen between her and Karen Noe. And she didn't have previously any interest in interviewing Karen. So I'm so grateful that things turned out the way that they did for everybody, the cat included. And now I see it was meant for us to have this conversation now. You were meant to be on my podcast, even though I had never heard of you before. And I'm so, so grateful that you were so flexible to just step in and do that, and fix your hair up and be willing to be on video, because of course Orion doesn't do video for her podcast. So thank you.
Well, it's a great joy, actually. And I'm probably reasonably fit, because I did some running just before, just because I thought, well, I wouldn't be there on film. So that was good, and that really kind of helped my energy levels to to get back up. And so it's fascinating. No, it's a great honor to be here, and I feel a great like-mindedness, and I'm sure this is between us, and not just between us, but with so many people who are on this path, and it's so beautiful to connect.
Yeah.
I like this idea of light workers, and it doesn't mean a ranking. It doesn't mean that some people have it and have all this understanding and the others are inferior. It's just that some people had this awakening and see the light and the brightness that can be brought into our lives by this higher connection. And the more we join forces, the more we can help others and bring more people on this path. And I do feel this is ultimately the meaning of life, of an incarnation, to open up and to get this understanding.
Yes. And you know what, funny that you mentioned the term light workers, because up until this year, I didn't like that term. And I think it goes back to my first marriage, and she was too woo-woo for me as an agnostic at the time. I didn't get it. Like, she'd sign emails love and light, and I just thought that was like, oh. Like, and in fact, there was this one really important lesson I learned about this just in December and January. So I had this big awakening in January, a second awakening where I prayed for a job, and the veil was lifted, and it was immediate, and it was beautiful. I was inspired because and my listeners have heard this before, but it was inspired from me preparing for an interview of Sheila Gillette, who channels 12 archangels that collectively go by the name Theo. And she was recalling her near-death experience and how she prayed to God, please let me stay on the planet, let me raise my kids, let me serve you, please give me a job, I'll do anything, just give me a job. And that stuck with me, and I a few months later decided I'm going to pray for that too. And so it was after that I realized, like, wow, I was really judgmental about light workers. And in fact, there was this one guy who's now been a guest on this podcast, and I love him dearly. He's an amazing guy, Aaron Scotty. And I judged him. He was a Hollywood producer, executive producer of the beautiful film Peanut Butter Falcon, about a boy with Down syndrome. It's really just heartfelt movie. And I was researching whether to have him on the podcast because a mutual friend who's in this mastermind that we're in called Metal pitched him as a guest for my show. And I'm looking him up, and I'm seeing from Hollywood producer to light worker, Aaron Scotty. And that's the title of the YouTube video or the interview or whatever. And I'm like, oh, please. And I just pass him up. I don't even respond to my friend who pitches this guy to be on my show. I don't respond to the guy directly at all. I just ghost them and move on. And that was really judgmental and arrogant, frankly, of me to do so. But, I went back a month later and apologized to Aaron. I explained what I did, and he's like, yeah, I actually didn't like that title at all. I thought that was not putting me in the best light, but I am a light worker, I guess. It's not really a term I go by, but I'm like, I don't know why I was so triggered by that, but it was a lesson. Anyways, I'm so glad to connect with you now. We had a powerful conversation. He told me about this amazing healer, Jay Lasco. Then she is a miracle worker, and she's done incredible stuff for me, for a bunch of my friends I've referred to her, and that wouldn't have happened. And that podcast interview wouldn't have happened if I had stayed in my judgment, if I hadn't fixed the mess that I made by simply judging somebody. I could have, moved on and said, that was in the past, but I said, no, I got to clean that up. Even though he had no idea that went on.
Yes.
I just had to clean it up. And so so glad I did.
Well
And
done.
yeah, it's like this stuff is all divinely orchestrated. It's like the everything is happening for us. It really is. It's incredible.
Yes. Yeah. It's fascinating. I'm going through this orchestration of my life at the moment without understanding it at all, and that's really interesting. Being here in the States at present, and nothing is quite kind of working out the way I had anticipated. But what then happened was that I suddenly thought I really need to work on my third book. This is basically that's the to-do book. Finally, the first is an explanation of the system of Reiki. The second is very much my life and the idea of past lives and how that all kind of comes together, and it kind of shows in a way how the universe is structured. But how do we bring that into our everyday life and awareness? Is this really like step-by-step exercises, realizing I'm a soul, I am love, I can forgive because I am forgiven already. This is something that really needs to be practiced, and that's what I've been working on. So the last few weeks, I've just been working on this book, and it's a fascinating journey that was so different from what I expected, and interestingly, against this backdrop of COVID, of the changes here, of the people I meet and how they are affected at present, all this brings a certain urgency to that, and I really feel I need to write it now, and it's the right time, and it's just fascinating. But I can't deny that for a few weeks I was properly frustrated. But out of that frustration, out of this running against the wall again and again and again, I realized, okay, so what am I supposed to do? And this came up that this is what I need to do now. So here I am.
That's awesome. And how did you end up becoming a Hay House author? And I don't know if all your 3 books are Hay House published.
At present, only the first one. The second is so autobiographical. It's my German accent, sorry. That they decided not to publish it, and let's see what happens with the next one. But that was a great honor to be asked by Hay House to write for a series of books. They used to be Hay House called Hay House Basics. Now they're called Made Easy. So the book is called Reiki Made Easy. And I do try to make it easy, and it is actually easy to learn. But this is what they had asked me to do, to just write an overview of the system, and it's how you learn it, and basically everything that can be taught about Reiki in Reiki courses, and quite a few Reiki teachers use that as their manual now in their courses as well. And it's nice to have this presence in various places. I had a lady on a course in London who picked up my book at the airport in Delhi, I think, in India. And it's just beautiful to be with Hay House and to have this exposure to like-minded people all over the world. And quite a few Hay House authors I'm friends with, so it's a lovely community.
Yes, yeah. I would love to be a Hay House author at some point. I'm probably going to tap a friend or two to make an intro, because I'm working on a book myself that's a self-help book about how we're living in a friendly universe. So yeah, for the skeptic, for the person who's not yet plugged in. So you got approached by Hay House. You didn't pitch them; they approached you.
Well, I sent them my first manuscript, and that was even more personal than the current one. And they said, we like it, but it's too personal. It just that doesn't work at present. And because they liked my approach to Reiki, they then, when they came up with this idea of the series, they asked me whether I wanted to write the book on Reiki.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's quite an honor. I love Hay House. I love Louise Hay. I actually attended a huge birthday celebration of her when she turned 90. I think it was in San Diego, and there was a whole, it was, I don't know, not a stadium, but a huge convention center filled with people celebrating her birthday. It was really cool.
No, I've heard about that. I've seen the pictures, and it is nice to be connected. And I'm very pleased that I work with Alternatives, which is a um, host speaking platform organizer, whatever you want to call it, in London. And I'm the only person speaking about Reiki there. And they had anything from anybody from the Dalai Lama to Mother Teresa to Marianne Williamson and Deepak Chopra there. And to be asked to basically join this group of people is a great honor.
Yeah.
And I find it fascinating how we have so many different modalities and so many different takes and so many different words often, but ultimately we just mean exactly the same. We mean a connection out there, and the realization that what we call normal life is in fact deeply abnormal. Normal life is this surreal spiritual experience. Being spiritual is normality, and being restricted in a body and having all these challenges, this is unusual and only temporary. And I think this is ultimately what it really all boils down to. And the more awareness we have of that in this life, the more we can also reach out, and the more meaning life has.
Yeah. Yeah. This is just school. This incarnation is just a classroom for us. And we've done this before. We'll do it again. And every spiritual lesson that we learn, we get to take into our next life, so we don't have to start all over again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Torsten. This was just a lovely, powerful, and inspiring conversation. And yeah, a lot of us have healing hands, and we just haven't tapped into it yet. Perhaps all of us do. And we just need...
All of us can learn that. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very cool. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And if you could share just quickly your website address, and if you're active on any social medias, your social, just so that our listener who wants to learn more, to learn about Reiki, maybe even study it, and perhaps even work with you, how they could do so.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes. As I said, everybody can learn Reiki. And what is quite fascinating, you can even learn it online. So if you do not find a teacher somewhere around you, there's an alternative. And I offer online courses. And the kind of opening that we call attunement in Reiki is something that I do one-on-one at a fixed time over any distance, but it is a connection with me to really open up, and afterwards people feel something in their hands, so they have healing hands. So I offer these courses through my websites. My personal website, torstenlange.com, then the US website, which is called reikiscience.com, and the courses are all on there. And in London, the live courses I offer through the Reiki. The website is called reikiacademylondon.com.
Awesome.
And I am on social media. I wish how people can find me there. I suppose they just have to somehow type in my name. So I do have a Facebook page, Torsten Lange, and I am on Instagram, and it is my resolve to post more there in the future. And I also do have a YouTube channel, Torsten Lange again.
Okay, awesome. And we'll include links to all of these in the show notes for this episode, so people will be able to jump straight to your social accounts. So thank you so much, Torsten. This was such a pleasure. And listener, I would love it if you would apply a little bit of what you've learned today in this episode in your life, and not just listen for entertainment or for curiosity, but actually put it to good use in your daily life. And we'll catch you on the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.